I need to tell you about the night everything in my life split into a before and an after. It began without any warning at all. The kind of quiet moment that tricks you into thinking you are safe. We were sitting at the dinner table we had shared for 15 years. The same chipped wooden table we bought when we were young and hopeful. I remember the smell of rosemary chicken still in the air. I remember the soft tapping of the clock on the wall. I remember him not meeting my eyes. It is strange how the mind stores trauma in small details instead of the big ones. The scrape of a fork. The flicker of a ceiling light. His silence. That silence was louder than any confession could have been. He cleared his throat the way he always did whenever he was preparing to justify something cruel. He spoke with a softness that felt practiced, rehearsed, too smooth. He began with phrases like, "I need to be honest," and "I have been struggling inside." I had heard those words before over the years when he needed forgiveness. The tone was the same, but something underneath it was different this time. He would not look at me. His eyes kept shifting toward the walls, the floor, anywhere except my face. That was the moment my chest tightened. I knew I was about to lose something I had worked my entire adulthood to protect. He told me he felt suffocated. He said he needed to find himself. He claimed that he had spent too many years living for others. Then he paused, and the silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush bone. When he finally looked up, his expression held something I had never seen in him before. Not guilt, not hesitation. It was excitement. A quiet thrill, contained behind measured breath, as though he was about to announce good news rather than devastation. Then he said it. "I met someone." The air in the room seemed to drop in temperature. My fingers went numb. He continued, "She is younger. She makes me feel alive again." He said it with a strange pride. Something like relief. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. The sound was so sharp it felt like it cut the space between us. He watched the fork fall but did not move to pick it up. He just waited, expecting my reaction. I searched his face for the man I used to know. The one who once held me through panic attacks and told me I was the only thing in this world he was sure of. That man was gone. The person sitting across from me had already left long before he spoke the words. He had simply forgotten to inform me. He waited for me to cry. He waited for the collapse. He waited for the begging. I could see it in his posture, the subtle tilt of his shoulders, the small tightening of his jaw. He thought I would fall apart the way I had during previous disappointments, during past mistakes he called misunderstandings. He thought I was still that woman. Something inside me hardened. Not out of anger. Out of recognition. I had spent years pouring myself into a vessel that had a hole at the bottom. No matter how much love I gave, it never filled. I felt my heartbeat slow, not speed up. I felt clarity, sharp and cold, settle into me like winter. I did not cry. My voice did not shake. I looked directly into his eyes for the first time that night. I spoke slowly so that he would hear every syllable. "What is her name?" He froze. For a moment, confusion passed through his expression. Then fear, because he realized I already knew. People think betrayal is discovered in one dramatic moment, but it is not. It is something the body senses long before the mind allows it to be true. The late nights. The phone turned face down. The sudden gym membership. The new cologne. The shift in laughter. The silence when you walk into a room. I had known. I just had not wanted to believe. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His face drained of color. His breathing changed. He whispered her name, barely audible, as if he was afraid someone else might hear. Hearing it aloud did not shatter me the way I expected. It felt like confirmation of a truth that had already lived quietly in my bones for months. I said her name again, slowly, almost gently. I wanted to watch the awareness hit him. He realized then that I had seen more than he thought, that I was no longer blind, that he was not in control of the moment the way he planned. He tried to regain dominance. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, trying to appear composed. He said, "I deserve happiness." He said, "I cannot apologize for following my heart." He tried to speak like a poet, but the words sounded cheap in his mouth. I listened. I did not interrupt. Letting him speak was my first act of power. He listed all the ways he felt trapped, all the ways he believed I had taken away his freedom. He spoke like a man delivering a speech he had practiced in his head for weeks. He believed he was righteous. That was what made it cruel. He thought his selfishness was a journey, something noble and brave. I waited until he finished. When the final self-justifying sentence left his lips, I leaned forward slightly. My voice remained steady. I know about the apartment lease. The room went silent. The air around us thickened. His face transformed. His confidence cracked instantly. His jaw slackened. His hands twitched. He did not know how to react. He had imagined many versions of the conversation, but not this one. Not the version where I already knew everything. Not the version where I was ahead of him. He stammered, reaching for excuses, explanations, stories that he had not prepared. His voice grew uneven. He tried to deny it, then stopped halfway through the sentence because he understood the lie would only make him smaller. He whispered, "How long have you known?" I told him the truth. Long enough. What I did not say was that I had known since the day I saw a smile on his face he had not shown me in years. A smile reserved for someone new. A secret smile. A beginning of something that did not include me in it. He looked frightened. Not of losing me, of losing control of the narrative he had carefully crafted. He had planned to cast himself as the brave victim of circumstance. The man who had no choice but to pursue happiness. He had written a story in which I would be the abandoned, broken, desperate woman. Instead, I was sitting upright, calm, composed, unshaken. That terrified him. There are moments in life where power shifts in a single breath. This was one. I could feel his certainty unravel. I could feel his assumptions fall apart. The balance between us was changing, and he knew it. I let the silence stretch. Let him feel the weight of the moment. Then I said one more sentence, one that would echo in his mind long after the night ended. You should know that everything you think you have planned is already falling apart. His eyes widened. He leaned forward, confusion turning quickly into panic. The human ego breaks most easily when it realizes the consequences are already in motion. He asked me what I meant. I did not answer. I stood up from the table. I picked up my fork from the floor. I placed it gently in the sink. I washed my hands slowly, feeling the warm water on my skin. I dried them. Then I turned to him. We are not finished. Then I walked out of the dining room, leaving him staring at the empty chair across from him, no longer sure of his place in the story at all. What happened after that conversation would shake the foundation of everything he believed he controlled. He had no idea that I was about to dismantle the life he thought he was walking confidently into. He had no idea that I was already preparing for what came next. And what came next would change everything. I need to take you back to the beginning, because without the beginning, none of this makes sense. People like to say love is a choice. I used to believe that. I believed in working hard, in holding on, in staying even when things felt heavy. I believed effort could fix anything. I did not understand love could also blind you so completely that you no longer recognized yourself. I met him when I was 22. I was still soft around the edges then. I still believed the world would reward goodness if you kept giving it. He had a charming smile, the kind that looked like it was carved just for you. He spoke with a quiet assurance, a confidence wrapped in gentleness. He was studying to become a doctor. I remember thinking how noble that sounded. I was working 2 part-time jobs and trying to finish my degree. He told me he admired my strength. I mistook admiration for commitment. In those early years, I wanted to take care of him. I wanted to be the person who made his life easier. I told myself I was being supportive. I told myself I was building a future with him. I never stopped to ask what I was receiving in return. There was a kind of romantic pride in sacrifice. I thought it made me loving. I did not see that it was slowly teaching him I would tolerate anything. He moved in with me before he finished school. He said it was temporary. He said it would help him stay focused. I paid most of the bills without thinking twice. I told myself it was just a phase. He would finish school soon. Once he was stable, things would balance out. I repeated that promise to myself so many times that it became its own kind of prayer. What I did not understand was that imbalance rarely corrects itself. It becomes habit, then expectation, then entitlement. His mother fell ill in our 3rd year together. He was devastated. I remember holding him while he cried in our dim living room. I remember smoothing his hair and whispering that we would get through it. His siblings visited occasionally, but the day-to-day care fell on me. I cooked for her. I cleaned her room. I took her to appointments. I sat beside her when she was too weak to speak. I fed her soup by hand. My name was the one she whispered when she needed help in the middle of the night. I never complained. I told myself this was what family meant. I told myself love required service. I did not realize I was training myself to disappear. He graduated. He became a doctor. He started making real money. Our life should have gotten easier then. I imagined weekends away, shared laughter, long, slow mornings together. Instead, the more he achieved, the less present he became. He said his schedule was demanding. He said his work required focus. He said he wanted to unwind with colleagues. I believed him at first. I knew medical life was hard. I excused the late nights. I excused the missed dinners. I excused the sudden preference for spending weekends out instead of home. I excused it all because I thought I was supposed to. Because I thought loyalty meant patience. What I did not see was how slowly I was fading. I gave so fully that I forgot I could want things too. Birthdays came and went. Anniversaries passed like normal days. I planned dinners he canceled. I lit candles he never saw. I wore dresses he did not notice. Each small disappointment felt minor on its own. You learn to swallow these things. You learn to call them life. You learn to silence the voice that whispers something is missing. The erosion happened so slowly, I almost missed it. The respect between us was thinning. The tenderness that once felt effortless became something I had to ask for. He used to touch my hand when he spoke. Then one day he stopped, and I could not remember when the last time had been. There is a unique grief in realizing someone is not cruel, not angry, not distant in obvious ways. They are simply not choosing you. There were moments when my body felt the truth long before my mind did. That subtle tightening in the chest when he came home smelling of a perfume that was not mine. The way he smiled at his phone. The sudden desire to shower before greeting me. The careful grooming. The spark in his eyes that I had not seen in years. A spark that was not for me. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself stress could make a person distant. I told myself love requires grace. I did not want to be the paranoid wife. I did not want to see the truth. Then came the receipt. It was a small thing. A slip of glossy paper tucked into the pocket of his coat. I was doing laundry. I remember the smell of detergent filling the room. I reached into his pocket without thinking and pulled it out. A spa service. An expensive one. Full package. Aromatherapy, massage, skin treatment. The kind of indulgence you give someone you want to impress. My name was nowhere on it. My first reaction was confusion, not pain. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a gift for a coworker. A thank you gesture. Something harmless. That is what hope does. It reaches for the kindest possible meaning, even when your stomach is already sinking. I waited for him to come home. I placed the receipt on the kitchen table. I sat beside it like I was sitting beside a ticking clock. When he finally walked in, his face broke into that easy smile he used to reserve for me. I almost allowed myself to believe again. Almost. I asked him about the receipt. He froze, his jaw tensed. His eyes flicked to the paper and back to me. The pause between our breaths stretched into something unbearable. He began to explain, but his words stumbled. He said it was for a colleague. He did not say the colleague's name. He said he forgot to mention it. He did not say why. His voice sounded thin, tired, fragile. I watched him very quietly while he spoke. Something shifted in me. I realized I was listening for the truth beneath the words, not the words themselves. The truth was simple. He was lying. That moment did not break me. It awakened me. There is a difference. Something inside me stood up. I had been bent for so long that I did not recognize my own spine until it straightened. I did not argue with him. I nodded. I told him I understood. He relaxed, relieved to believe the lie had worked. He kissed my forehead. He thanked me for being patient. I smiled. I said, "Of course." I learned that silence can be a blade sharper than any shouted accusation. That night, I lay awake with my eyes open in the dark. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of 15 years pressing down on me. I counted them backwards. The birthdays I spent alone. The times I apologized first, even when I had been the one hurt. The times I accepted crumbs and called it a feast. The nights I waited for him to come home. The mornings I woke before him to make sure he never felt burdened. The dreams I set aside because they did not fit the life we were building. I thought about the woman he was seeing. I pictured her young, effortless, unmarked by sacrifice. Someone who had not yet learned that love could be used as currency. Someone who did not know the real cost of devotion. I felt shame first. Shame that I had allowed myself to become invisible. Shame that I had given so much without asking for anything in return. Shame that I had mistaken endurance for love. Then the shame shifted into something steadier, fiercer. I felt clarity. The quiet kind. The kind that arrives after a storm tears everything apart. That receipt was not just a receipt. It was a mirror. It showed me who I had become. A woman standing in the ruins of her own good intentions. What would you do if you found a receipt like that? Would you confront? Would you cry? Would you break? I did none of those things. I waited, because deep down I knew that was only the beginning. The real truth was still hiding. The real betrayal had not yet shown its full shape. What I found next would make the receipt look like nothing at all. I used to think the worst pain came from being lied to. I was wrong. The worst pain comes from realizing you already knew the truth, deep down, long before the evidence ever showed itself. That thought stayed with me for days after I found the receipt. I did not confront him. I did not ask questions. Questions are for people who still believe there is something left to save. I simply watched. I listened. I paid attention in a way I never had before. It was like someone adjusted the lighting on my life and suddenly the colors changed. Behaviors I once called stress, I now recognized as avoidance. Routine I once called work ethic, I now saw as distance. The truth was not new. The truth had been sitting beside me at the dinner table every night, waiting for me to turn my head. He left earlier than usual in the mornings. He came back later. He became careful with his phone in a way that was almost theatrical. Notifications no longer lit up his screen. His phone face down, always. He laughed more. Not with me. Not at home. He would return with this quiet smile like someone who had been seen, admired, desired. I used to pray that look was about me once. I remembered those early years when just saying my name softened his voice. Watching him now felt like watching a stranger borrow my husband's face. I did not cry. Not yet. Grief is loud. Betrayal is quiet. I felt a quietness settling inside me so deep it was almost sacred. I was beginning to wake up. One evening, after he fell asleep with his back turned to me as usual, I stayed awake, staring into the dark. My heart beat steadily, not in panic but in recognition. I finally understood that love does not make you blind. Love makes you refuse to look. I had refused for years. I was done refusing. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. He never worried about hiding anything digital because he believed I trusted him. He believed I was loyal in that naive, unthinking way that makes women easy to discard. He believed I would never look because I had never looked before. He underestimated the moment a woman's hope dies. It changes everything. I began with credit card statements. Nothing dramatic at first. A slow accumulation of small charges that, alone, mean nothing. A restaurant bill just slightly too high for one person. A rideshare charge to a part of town he never mentioned. Skincare products I did not use. There is a kind of cruelty in subtle patterns. They reveal intent without revealing identity. He had built his deceit carefully. Then came the hotel. A mid-range place across town. A place designed not to draw attention. The charge appeared as something generic. masked by a corporate name on the banking app. But I knew. A wife knows. This time, something inside me did not break. Something hardened. I checked phone records next. I was not looking for names. Only patterns. Late-night calls. Daytime messages. A number repeated too often. The number saved under a false label. Of course he thought he was clever. He always believed himself one step smarter than everyone. Pride is a fragile thing when exposed to the slightest truth. One evening, he went to shower. His phone buzzed and lit up. I did not touch it. I did not need to. I was not looking for confirmation anymore. I was gathering context. I moved to his home office. The room I had dusted. The room I once left small sweet notes in. The room where I thought he was building our future. The room where he was quietly replacing me. The desk drawer stuck slightly as I pulled it open, as if the drawer itself hesitated, aware of the weight of what I was about to see. Inside lay a folder. Plain, unmarked, ordinary. The kind of ordinary that hides catastrophes. I opened it. There it was. A lease, signed, processed, approved, a new apartment, 1 bedroom, nice area, move-in date in less than 30 days. His name. Only his. My first thought was logical, almost gentle. Maybe this was temporary housing for work. Maybe he planned a surprise. Maybe there was an explanation. Hope dies slowly. Hope does not leave without fighting. Then I saw the second paper, a financial agreement. He had been moving accounts. Preparing documents. Changing beneficiaries. Transferring ownership of investments to his private account. Setting up a new life. A life where I had no place. A life where the years I had given him were an inconvenience to be erased. Do you understand what it feels like to realize someone has been planning to erase you? Not leave you, not divorce you. Erase you. Quietly, strategically, efficiently, as if you were a temporary scaffolding used to build a structure, useful until no longer needed. My hands did not shake. My voice did not rise. I sat on the edge of our bed, that bed where I once buried my face in his shoulder after losing pregnancies, after funerals, after disappointments. That bed where I believed we were building something real. I sat there and looked around the room. The framed photos, the clothes we folded together, the bills we paid, the routines we formed, the life I thought was mutual. He had planned to dismantle this life piece by piece, while still holding me each night, while still letting me cook meals for him, laugh at his jokes, meet his colleagues, comfort him when he was tired. He had been practicing the role of husband while preparing to abandon the identity entirely. The cruelty was not in the betrayal. The cruelty was in the performance. I did not cry. Tears are for endings. This was not an ending. This was awakening. Later that night, he kissed me goodnight. Not lovingly, absently, like someone closing a book they were finished with. I lay still and studied the ceiling. I remembered every sacrifice, every missed chance, every moment I swallowed my needs for the sake of support, stability, survival. I remembered being young and believing that love was something you earned through loyalty. No. Love is not earned by disappearing yourself. Love is not maintained by silence. Silence is how you lose yourself piece by piece. I realized I had been disappearing for years. Something inside me shifted. Quietly, powerfully. It did not feel like rage. Rage burns. This felt colder. More focused. It felt like clarity. He thought he was planning my replacement. He did not realize I was no longer the woman who could be erased. I decided I would not confront him. Confrontation is reactive. I was done reacting. I decided to prepare. Now we move forward to what came next. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just laid the papers on the table between us and watched his smile fall apart. There is a particular silence that comes before truth is spoken, a silence that feels thick, like the air itself is waiting to see who you will become. That silence filled our dining room the night everything changed. Not the dramatic kind of change you see in movies. This was the quiet transformation of a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. I had spent days preparing. Not emotionally. Emotion had no place in this part. I prepared strategically. I sat with attorneys. I learned how our state treated marital assets. I learned what counted as contributions to a shared life. I learned that every paycheck I earned while he chased his ambitions counted. I learned that every bill I paid while he studied counted. Every sacrifice, every year, every lonely night at that kitchen table. I learned that I was not powerless. I learned that my silence had protected him, but it could just as easily destroy him. I didn't tell him I knew. I didn't question him. I didn't accuse. Accusations invite lies. Lies invite explanations. Explanations create confusion, and confusion is how manipulators win. I waited. I waited until the plan was fully formed, until every document was copied, every account recorded, every detail secured. I learned that revenge is not loud. Revenge is methodical. The night of the confrontation, I cooked dinner like normal. The same meal he always said he loved. The one I used to make to show care. This time I made it as a final ritual, a deliberate ending to a role I was stepping out of. The table was set. The candles were lit. The air looked soft and warm in the golden light, but inside me everything was cold. He walked in late again, smelling like cologne I had never chosen. He kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, barely looking at me, the way someone touches furniture to prove they know the space they are in. Familiar, without meaning, I watched him move around the kitchen. His shoulders relaxed. His guard lowered. He believed the stage was still his. We sat, he ate. He talked about his day, offering details that were so carefully vague it was almost insulting. I nodded. Right on cue, he asked how my day was. This time I answered. I said, productive. He didn't hear the difference. The blindness of arrogance is almost blinding to watch. When he finished eating, I stood. I walked to the counter. I returned with the folder. I placed it on the table. No shake in my hand. No hesitation. He looked at it like it was a harmless thing. A bill, a form. Something trivial. He opened it. It took only a second. His eyes moved across the paperwork. The bank statements. The lease. The document listing his private account transfers. Copies of messages he didn't know I had retrieved. And then, at the bottom, the contact information for the attorney. My attorney. The breath left his lungs in a quiet, almost inaudible sigh. Not guilt. Not regret. Shock. He had believed he was the hunter. He suddenly realized he had been the one walking into a trap. He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw him clearly. Not my husband. Not my partner. A man who had built a future where I did not exist. A man who thought erasing me would be simple. His voice was softer than I expected. He said, "You're overreacting." It was almost laughable. This was the same man who once argued that late fees on bills were emergencies. Now his secret new life was a misunderstanding. He reached for the oldest weapon he knew. His calm voice. Calm has always been used by controlling men to imply the other person is irrational. He tried to keep his tone level. He said that I was being emotional, that I had misunderstood, that the apartment was temporary, that the financial changes were paperwork. He spun excuses quickly, skillfully, the way someone practices lies long before needing to speak them. I did not react. Reaction gives power. I simply said, "I know." He froze. The table between us became a battlefield. His eyes narrowed. He shifted tactics. If manipulation fails through reason, the next step is attack. He leaned back and said, "You've become impossible to talk to." Then he added, with a small shrug that was far too casual, "You haven't exactly been a wife lately." That sentence was crafted with precision, aimed for old wounds, designed to make me defend myself, to draw me into explaining, pleading, apologizing. I did none of those things. He studied me, and I saw the moment he realized the dynamic had changed. I was no longer someone who could be controlled through guilt. The realization frightened him. People like him only know how to relate through power. Lose power, lose identity. His voice turned sharp. He said, "If you think anyone will choose you over me, you're delusional." There it was. The mask gone. The cruelty exposed. I did not flinch. I said one sentence, my voice steady, my posture unshaken. The court documents are filed. His mouth opened. No sound came out. I continued. You will be served tomorrow morning. Your attorney will receive notifications regarding shared assets and temporary support arrangements. I slid the final paper across the table. We will handle this legally. Not emotionally. His face changed. The confidence drained out like water leaving a cracked vessel. He could not comprehend it. The version of me he had depended on for control no longer existed. His expression flickered through disbelief, anger, fear, denial. He said, You wouldn't do this. You're not strong enough. I said, I already did. He stood. His chair scraped loudly against the floor, the only violent sound in the room. He tried one last tactic, rage, not loud rage, controlled rage. The kind intended to intimidate. He leaned close, voice low enough that a stranger would call it measured. He said, Without me, you are nothing. I looked at him, and something inside me softened, not with love, but clarity. I saw him for the smallness he hid behind arrogance. I saw the child in him who needed to feel superior to matter. I saw the insecurity wrapped in cruelty, and I felt nothing, not hate, not grief, nothing. I said, That was true once. It is not true anymore. The silence after that sentence felt final. His eyes flicked away first. The first surrender. I gathered the plates. I washed them. I dried them. He stood in the doorway watching me, trying to understand how the ground had shifted under him without warning. He thought betrayal made me weak. He never understood that betrayal is an awakening. I slept soundly that night. The first real sleep I had experienced in years. Not because I was free yet, but because I knew I had stopped abandoning myself. The morning came. The papers were served. He packed a bag and left. He didn't slam the door. He didn't yell. Quiet shame is louder than anger. He thought distance would give him back control. He thought I would crumble without him there to validate my existence. He still did not understand who I had become. Weeks passed. The legal process moved forward. I attended every meeting. I documented everything. I spoke clearly. I did not shake. I did not apologize for taking up space. Every step felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I had lost along the way. Then the court date arrived. I walked into that courtroom with my head high, my posture steady, my heart silent. I was not there to argue. I was there to finalize a truth that had already taken root inside me. When I stepped inside, I saw her. She was younger, the girl. The replacement in waiting. She sat beside him, hands folded neatly in her lap, wearing confidence like perfume. She looked at me the way someone looks at an expired product on a shelf. Pity mixed with triumph. She believed she had already won. She had no idea the story was not finished yet. I remember the sound of the courtroom clock ticking. Slow, steady, almost cruel. It was the only sound in the room when everything that had been hidden began to come into the light. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded in my lap, back straight, face calm. I was not trembling. I was not afraid. I had spent years afraid. Fear no longer had a place in me. The judge looked over his glasses at the file my attorney had handed him. It was thick, heavier than it looked, heavy with proof, heavy with truth, heavy with the weight of the years I spent holding together a life that he was quietly replacing. He sat across from me, jaw tight, shoulders stiff, trying to appear composed. He wore the same expression he always put on when he wanted the world to think he was rational, respectable, trustworthy. His mask, his performance. But I had lived with him long enough to recognize the flicker in his eye, the strain around his mouth, the pulse ticking at his neck. He was unraveling thread by thread, and beside him sat the young woman. She was dressed carefully. Not flashy. Not provocative. She wanted to appear mature, respectable, composed. Yet her hands were trembling. At first she kept them clasped tightly together in her lap. But as the proceedings continued, she loosened them, then tightened them again. The truth has a way of moving through the body before the mind accepts it. My attorney began with the timeline. Not accusations. Facts. 15 years of marriage. 2 jobs I held during his schooling. The loans I paid. The household I maintained. The caregiving I provided for his mother. The sacrifices I did not list because they were so many they had become air, unseen but necessary for life. He stared ahead, his jaw clenched, but he did not interrupt. He couldn't. The evidence was not emotional. It was documented. Then came the financial disclosures, the bank transfers, the investment accounts, the apartment lease, the spa charges, the dinners, the hotel receipts. Every lie that I once swallowed in silence now sat printed on paper in front of a judge with legal authority. The young woman's hand slowly slipped from his. At first, she looked confused, then hurt. Then something else. Betrayal is not exclusive. A man who lies to one woman will lie to another. She was learning that lesson in real time. I could see it in the way her spine curled slightly forward, as if something inside her had been knocked loose. She was not my enemy. She was just the next fool in line, but she believed at first that she was different. They always do. My attorney slid forward a set of text messages, words he sent to her on nights he came home to me, words promising futures, promising vacations, promising love, promising money, promising her the life I had built. She read them. Her face drained. Her eyes filled, not with guilt, but with dawning comprehension. He had never planned to give her anything real. He had simply planned to move from one host to the next, feeding off affection, devotion, service, stability, without offering any of those things in return. The judge asked him if he disputed the evidence. He swallowed. No excuses. No false explanations. No rehearsed speeches. The truth stripped him bare. The courtroom felt cold. The kind of cold that comes with exposure, with seeing someone not as you hoped they were, but as they always truly were. My attorney spoke next, calmly, firmly. She provided the financial foundation of the household. She supported his career development. She maintained the stability of the home. She cared for his family. And during this time, he took steps to conceal assets and exit the marriage without equitable division. The words conceal, assets reverberated like a bell tolling, the calm. Judge nodded slowly. Then he spoke. His voice was level, unemotional, but final, based on the evidence. The court recognized the contributions made by the spouse, my contributions. Recognized the financial inequity. Recognized the attempt to abandon financial responsibility. Recognized the intention to erase me from a life I helped build. The ruling was clear. Alimony awarded. Asset division in my favor. Housing rights granted. Financial penalties imposed for the concealed. Accounts. Everything he tried to take away from me. Everything he schemed to claim was now legally and publicly acknowledged as mine. It was not revenge. It was restoration. He didn't lose because he cheated. Cheating is a moral failure, not a legal one. He lost because he underestimated the woman he believed would remain quiet. I didn't gloat. I didn't look at him with triumph or satisfaction. I didn't need to. His own face told the story. His eyes had gone blank. The expression of a man who suddenly realizes he is not the main character in the story anymore. The young woman stood up quietly. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. She placed her purse over her shoulder. And without a word to him, without a single glance back, she left the courtroom. She understood. She was free. He watched her go. And that was the first time I saw regret touch his expression, not for me. Never for me, but for losing what he thought would replace me. The hearing ended. People stood. Papers shuffled. Chairs scraped. The world resumed its noise, but around me something was still very still. I walked out of the courtroom alone. Not lonely, just alone. The hallway was wide and filled with echoes. I didn't rush. I didn't look back. I stepped outside, and the sunlight felt different. Warmer, real, like something was pouring back into my body, filling places that had been hollow for years. It was in that moment, standing there, breathing the open air, that I realized what had changed. Not him. Not the court. Not the money. Me for the first time in my life. I felt free, but freedom is not the end of a story. Freedom is the beginning of what comes next. I didn't know who I was without him. That was the thought that echoed through my mind the morning after everything became final. The ink on the divorce papers had dried. The courtroom was behind me. The arguments, the humiliation, the unraveling of a life I once believed was permanent. It was all finished. Yet I woke up to a silence that felt unfamiliar, almost frightening. No footsteps in the hallway. No tension clinging to the air. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that forces you to hear your own heartbeat. For the first time in years, I had to look myself in the mirror and ask, quietly, almost as if afraid of the answer, what now? The first days were not filled with liberation or joy. They were heavy. I walked around my own home like I was a guest in it. I kept expecting his voice, his keys in the door, his presence like a shadow I had grown too used to. Healing does not begin with triumph. Healing begins with the slow and painful realization that you must rewrite the way you have been living. I cried while making breakfast. I cried while folding clothes. Not because I missed him, but because I was finally grieving the version of myself I had abandoned to keep him comfortable. There were moments, though small and gentle, where I felt something almost like air filling my lungs again. One evening, I took a walk at sunset. I watched the sky turn soft shades of pink and gold. I realized I did not have to explain where I was going. I did not have to answer for my time or my choices. Freedom does not come like a storm. It comes like a whisper, a soft reminder that you belong to yourself again. I started rebuilding quietly. I joined a women's support group. I did not speak the first session. I simply listened. Mothers, professionals, widows, survivors. Women who had been laughed at, abandoned, lied to, underestimated, manipulated, or silenced. Women who were learning how to start again. Their strength filled the room like warmth. One woman said something I never forgot. The life you lost wasn't your life. It was a cage. Hearing it was like feeling a door unlock inside my chest. I began traveling alone. Short trips at first. Museums, coastal towns, a small cabin in the mountains where I watched the trees sway like they were breathing. I learned how to dine alone without feeling self-conscious, how to walk into a room without shrinking, how to enjoy the sound of my own laughter. I started reading again. I started sleeping through the night. I started remembering what peace felt like. I also began the business I had once dreamed of. A small design studio, something I had whispered about years earlier, in the early days of the marriage when I still believed my ambitions mattered. He used to tell me it was a hobby, something I would give up once real responsibilities took over. His dismissiveness had become my silence. Now my silence had become momentum. I worked hard. I made mistakes. I learned. I grew. One afternoon, months later, my phone buzzed with a message from a name I recognized too well. The younger woman. The woman he had chosen when he believed I would never leave. I stared at her name for a long time. Old wounds began to stir, but they no longer held power. I answered. She asked to meet. Not to apologize. Not to defend herself. She simply wanted to understand. She had believed everything he had told her. The promises. The future he painted. The lies about me. She did not look victorious when I saw her. Her eyes were tired. Her voice trembled. She said she thought she had won something. Instead, she had inherited the emptiness he carried. I forgave her. Not for her sake. Not to absolve her. I forgave her because I refused to carry any part of him any longer. Forgiveness was not softness. Forgiveness was release. Healing was not a straight line. Some days I woke up crying. Some days I felt weightless. Some days I sat in silence, letting peace return to me drop by drop. I learned that rebuilding yourself is not about becoming who you were before. It is about becoming someone you never allowed yourself to be. You know, there is something I want to ask you. Now that you've heard this far, have you ever had to rebuild yourself after losing someone you thought you needed? It is one of the hardest battles a person can face. Yet there is something sacred waiting on the other side of that pain. A person who is stronger, wiser, softer, clearer. A person who finally belongs to themselves. One morning, I woke up and noticed something different. The silence in my home no longer felt empty. It felt like peace. It felt like possibility. I realized I had not lost a husband. I had released a weight I was never meant to carry. I had been reborn not through forgiveness of him, but through the reclamation of myself. That was the day I walked outside, lifted my face to the light, and understood something I never could have seen before. My story was not ending. It was beginning.